This is the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast, episode 724. Distracted: Why Students Can't Focus and What You Can Do About It, with Dr. James Lang. Welcome to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast, hosted by author, educator, speaker, and mom, the Cool Cat teacher, Vicki Davis. In today's podcast, Dr. James Lang has 6 recommendations for understanding student attention and how we can get their attention while we teach, even when teaching online. This important topic will help all of us become better teachers in challenging times. Dr. Lang is a professor of English and the director of the DeMora Center for Teaching Excellence at Assumption College. He is the author of 6 books. Dr. Lang writes a monthly column on teaching and learning for the Chronicle of Higher Education. He conducts teaching workshops in the U.S. and abroad, and has even consulted the United Nations on the development of teaching materials in ethics and integrity. Now, let's find more effective ways to get students to pay attention. Enjoy!
Educators, do you want the inside scoop on the latest student engagement techniques being used by district schools and teachers in distance and hybrid learning? Then you need to download a copy of Go Guardian's 2020 State of Engagement Report, sponsor of today's show. Stay tuned at the end of the show to learn how to receive this valuable report. Today we're talking with Dr. James M. Lang, author of Distracted: Why Students Can't Focus and What You Can Do About It. Now, Jim, this is such a great topic because I'll tell you, the teachers who are right now in distance learning or hybrid learning, they are so tired of just talking to black boxes with the names of students on them. They feel like they're not getting paid attention to. And what am I doing? Am I just pretending? You feel like that your book, which came out last year, is even more relevant today?
Absolutely. The main thing that I want to really convey in the book, and the sort of main idea that I hope people take away from the book and from this conversation, is to think about the fact that attention is an achievement. It's actually something we have to work for. We tend to think about distraction as sort of the falling away from attention, which is the norm. But if you look at the research from both history and biology and neuroscience, all these disciplines, it tells us actually that our minds are naturally very easily distractible, and attention is sort of like an achievement that arises out of like the ocean of distraction that we're normally swimming in. So what we're experiencing right now is kind of an intensification of that, but it's sort of always been true. It's always been true that we've had very distractible minds. And in the book, I cite going back to the ancient Greek philosophers talking about how distractible their minds are. So what we have to consider now is just how our technology is sort of intensifying the problem, but the problem has always been there. And the strategies that I talk about in the book are ones that are designed to kind of address the issue, no matter where we are in, time or history or the development of our technologies.
So what can we do about it, Jim?
The first thing I recommend to people, like in a general way, is to sort of become an investigator of attention. Think about yourself. Like, when do you pay attention to something, and when do you sort of angle away toward your distractions? That's how I started the process of thinking about attention and writing the book, was to just start to pay attention to my own experiences, but then also like observing people around me. Like when I went to a play or something like that, or was watching a film with my family or something, what made people tune in and what made people tune back out? And I really learned a lot from that, just sort of observing when people paid attention and when they didn't, and then trying to think, all right, well, what of this applies to my classroom? Which of these are things that I can translate into actual teaching strategies and techniques? So that's like the general thing that I would encourage all teachers to do, is become an investigator of attention and think about your own experiences, the experience of your children, the experiences of your friends. When do they tune in and when do they tune out? And what can you take from that into your classroom?
Well, and it's pretty easy to see, when you're Zoom. Are they engaging? Are they conversing? Are they all tuned out? There's a great quote by W. Edwards Deming, a good person in a bad system, and the bad system wins every time. And teachers want to say, hey, that's me. But, it can also be our students. Talk to them for 45 minutes. Goodbye. They're not going to pay attention to that.
Absolutely. This is a great time, too, to think about the fact that, our students are, many of us think they're not as attuned as we would like them to be on our sort of synchronous learning sessions. But, my wife is a teacher. I'm also a teacher. And I just observe us on our faculty meetings. Like, how attuned are we to those faculty meetings, and how often are we doing something else when we're really supposed to be tuned in to those experiences as well? And that's something I really encourage people to do, especially right now. When you're on a Zoom like departmental meeting, or you're meeting with other people for whatever reason, what's getting you into that session and what is making you check your email or do something else, turn off your camera and do something else. And again, try to think about how you can use that, whatever you learn there, to apply to your own teaching. But there's another really important thing here, which is I just want people to take away too, like a sense of empathy for what your students are going through, right? So when your students are having trouble paying attention, when they're distracted, recognize that this is something we are all experiencing right now. And if you go at it from a place of sort of punishment and disapproval, you're not going to get as far as if you go at it from a place of empathy and understanding. Look, we're all distracted right now. It's difficult to pay attention on Zoom. So I want us to work together to try and identify what are the things that we can do that are going to help each other pay attention, because attention is reciprocal. The more attention I pay to you, the more attention you are likely to pay to me. So how can we help one another pay attention in these teaching and learning environments we create, whether they're online or whether they are through our screens?
Well, empathy is just so important, just respecting the learner. I mean, there's the old saying, nobody wants to go to work to do a bad job. And I don't think students want to go to school and not be interested. They don't want to be bored. I mean, that's what boring is, they want to be interested. So what can we actually do? We want to observe, which is important. I think we have to observe. I love what you said, to observe when you're engaged in Zoom. Have empathy. What else?
The book has about 6 sort of different principles we can use. One of them is community. And so that's kind of a little bit what we already started talking about that a little bit. Invite students to help you form a community of attention. Think about inviting them to share with you, like, okay, so what has your experiences been in these online classes we've been taking? What has helped you pay attention? What has not? And together, let's use that in order to kind of think about how we're going to operate together as a class. So that's one thing. I also mentioned a couple other things, 2 other principles. One is thinking about the structure of the experience. And here I would again invite people to think about like outside of school. So one of the sort of places in which people have had to think about how to get humans to pay attention for an extended period of time is in the theater, right? So when you go to the theater, you get a program, it tells you exactly what's going to happen. There are acts and scenes. There's transitions and variety and change. And I think those things are really important for helping people pay attention. As you said, you can't just come in and expect people to sit for 45 minutes while you talk at them. Our attention just doesn't work that way. So we need to have things like change and variety. So I encourage people to think about your class is an experience that unfolds through time. And to look to the places where, artists and authors and thinkers and speakers have had to kind of keep people's attention through experiences that unfold over time. And, typically you're not going to keep someone's attention for longer than 10, 15, 20 minutes. This 10-minute podcast is a great example of this, right? You've got a great following because you're giving people kind of a quick little introduction to an idea. And we love that. And then we love to go on and do something else. So how can you think about the structure of your classroom experience as kind of a modular one that features change and variety? The second thing I would encourage people to think about is the fact that familiarity dulls our attention. So think about you're driving the same route to work, for example, every day, back when we drove to work before the pandemic, but you're driving the same route to work every day. You're kind of on automatic pilot and you don't notice the things that are around you because you've just become so attuned to them. They're so familiar, you sort of become blind to them. That's something that happens with our attention. The more kind of familiar a setting we are in, the less we pay attention to it. So think about your students right now who are looking at these black boxes all day long, over and over again, teachers doing similar kinds of things, right? And what I invite people to do is to think about creating what I call signature attention activities, creative pedagogical strategies that invite students to look at something in a really new and interesting way, to really kind of reopen up their wonder at whatever it is that you're asking them to do. So in the book, I give a few examples of these. My favorite one, though, is an art history professor at the college level who had her students go to the local art museum, look at the same painting every week for 13 weeks in a row. And each week they had to write a new 2-page paper about that painting. And the idea was, you're going to walk by this painting like people walk by paintings in museums all the time. The average amount of time that people look at a painting in a museum is 7 seconds. So I want you to go and you've got to keep looking over and over and over again. And eventually, those students started to see amazing things in that painting and to realize that painting could contain miracles and wonders they would have never expected. So think creatively about how you can reintroduce your subject matter to your students in ways that are really going to make them step back and go, whoa, I never thought about it like that. Putting it in new context, having them view it through new lenses, getting them to do things that are maybe a little bit unexpected, a little bit different. And if you can come up with a good signature attention activity once a week, that really kind of, reinvites your students to wake up and pay attention to it, I think that's one of the best things that we can do in our courses.
Back in the spring when we had weekly meetings with our teachers and we would get together and talk about what works, and some of our elementary teachers said, you know what, I noticed that every time we have show and tell, 100% of the kids come, 100% of the kids can turn on their mic, 100% of the kids can turn on their camera, and all of them bring something. So they starting class 5 to 10 minutes early and having show and tell. And even the high school teachers adapted it. And they said, okay, we're going to have silly hat day. We're going to have this day. We're going to have that day. They took it from the elementary and it worked. And the kids came, quote, 5 minutes early, did their silly hat or whatever, took their silly hat off, studied honors biology or AP history. And then at the end of the class, they would put them back on and take pictures that they saved. And it was like, yeah, I know it's silly, but aren't we all looking for novelty and interest right now?
Absolutely. And you know what I love about that is one of the ways to think about how to create these kinds of activities, or like the impact they're going to have, is you want students to show up and be like, I wonder what's going to happen here today, right? And like anything goes, right? According to what I've experienced with this teacher before, something new and really exciting might happen in here today. And like, that's the sense that we want them to come into the class with. And I know it's hard. We're all tired. It's difficult for us to be on these Zoom calls all the time, but it just means we have to maybe dig down a little and try to recapture our own sense of wonder. And like, we got into teaching the thing that we teach because we love it and we find it wonderful and amazing. We have to recapture a little bit of that and then be able to communicate that to our students.
So as we finish, fill in the blank, Jim, in 2021, I hope teachers don't blank.
I hope teachers don't give up on the idea that our students can pay attention and they can use their attention to learning. We just have to make sure that we are doing everything in our power to help support and sustain their attention.
Okay, well, the book is Distracted: Why Students Can't Focus and What You Can Do About It by James M. Lang. Thanks for all of these ideas and these ways to think about attention, because this is something that we all can struggle with these days. Thank you. Educators, I've just read an eye-opening report which includes valuable classroom research and information on distance learning best practices. It's called Go Guardian's State of Engagement Report. This is a must-read, so I'm sharing it with you. You may be interested to know that many teaching techniques that boost the excellence of student engagement can also be applied to remote teaching. Engagement can go up even though the environment is very different. There's so much more in this report. Download your copy of the State of Engagement Report 2020 from Go Guardian now at coolcatteacher.com/engage for the latest research on student engagement. That's coolcatteacher.com/engage now.